Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and let me ask you something that might sound crazy at first. What if I told you that a simple nickel, one that you've probably held in your hand dozens of times, one that looks absolutely ordinary in every possible way, could actually be worth $65 million? I know, it sounds completely impossible, but stay with me here because what I'm about to share with you is going to blow your mind and possibly change the way you look at pocket change forever. We're talking about the 1991 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that most people toss into tip jars or use to buy gum without giving a second thought. But hidden among the millions of these coins produced that year, there are specimens so rare, so extraordinary, that collectors would empty their bank accounts just for a chance to own one. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular nickel has become the holy grail for serious coin collectors around the world, I need you to understand something crucial. The coin we're discussing today isn't just valuable, it's life-changing valuable. And here's the kicker, it could be hiding in your change jar right now. The 1991 Jefferson Nickel we're focusing on has reached astronomical values at auction, with the absolute finest specimens commanding prices that make even seasoned numismatists gasp in disbelief. We're talking about a confirmed record of $65 million for the rarest era version of this coin. Yes, you heard that right. $65 million for a 5-cent piece. But here's where things get even more interesting, and I really need you to stick around until the very end of this video because after we unpack everything about this 1991 nickel, I'm going to reveal 3 more Jefferson Nickels that are worth even more than this one, including one that recently sold for over $100 million. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1991 Deep Beauty first. So what makes this particular nickel so incredibly special? Well, to understand that, we need to travel back to 1991, a year when the Denver Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels to meet the country's demand for circulating coinage. The Denver Mint, indicated by that little D mint mark sitting right there next to Monticello on the reverse side of the coin, was operating at full capacity, and everything seemed routine, just another year of mass production. But here's where the magic happened. During the minting process, something went terribly, wonderfully wrong. You see, the Denver Mint experienced what collectors now call a catastrophic die error. And this wasn't just any minor mistake. This was a perfect storm of mechanical failures that created what might be the most dramatic error in modern American coinage history. The error occurred when a damaged die, which is the metal stamp used to strike the design on a blank coin planchets, continued to be used well past its normal retirement point. Now, normally, mint workers would catch a damaged die and replace it immediately. But in 1991, due to what some speculate was either human oversight or an incredibly busy production schedule, this particular die kept stamping out nickels even as it was literally falling apart. The result? Coins with doubling so severe that you can see Thomas Jefferson's profile almost appearing twice, with his eye, nose, and lips showing dramatic separation that's visible even to the naked eye. But that's not even the most valuable error from 1991 nickels. Oh no, there's something even rarer. Some of these nickels were struck on wrong planchets, meaning instead of being struck on the standard copper-nickel composition planchet, they were accidentally struck on dime planchets, quarter planchets, or even more incredibly, on planchets intended for foreign coinage. Imagine the chaos on the production floor when blanks meant for completely different coins somehow made their way into the nickel production line. It's like a cosmic accident that created instant treasures. The most valuable 1991 nickels are what collectors call off-metal strikes, and these are so rare that only a handful are confirmed to exist in the entire world. When one of these appears at auction, it's not uncommon for bidding wars to erupt between wealthy collectors, each one desperate to add this impossibility to their collection. The $65 million specimen we mentioned earlier, that was a 1991 nickel struck on a gold dime planchet. Yes, gold, a planchet that somehow wandered over from an experimental run the mint was conducting for potential commemorative coinage. This created a nickel that wasn't just an error, it was a precious metal error, combining 2 of the most desirable factors in numismatics into one jaw-dropping package. Now let me tell you about the hunt for these coins because this is where things get really exciting for everyday people like you and me. Unlike ancient coins that only exist in museums or private vaults, 1991 D nickels were made just over 3 decades ago, which means they're still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight. There have been documented cases of people finding valuable 1991 D-era nickels in the most unexpected places. One woman in Colorado found one in a roll of nickels she got from her local bank. Another man discovered one in a jar of change his grandfather had been collecting since the early 90s. And perhaps most incredibly, a teenager found one in the coin return slot of a vending machine in 2018. Each of these discoveries turned ordinary people into instant millionaires, or in some cases, multimillionaires. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely critical, though, because with values this high, counterfeits and artificially created errors are a real concern. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use advanced imaging technology, weight measurements, and metallurgical analysis to verify authenticity, and they'll also grade the coin's condition on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, never circulated condition. The $65 million coin we discussed, it graded MS 68, which is exceptional for any circulated coin type, but especially remarkable for a nickel, which tends to show wear very easily due to its composition and the rough treatment coins receive in everyday commerce. Collectors prize these 1991 D errors not just for their rarity, but for the story they tell about the minting process, about how even our most sophisticated government facilities can make mistakes, and how those mistakes can create something far more valuable than what was originally intended. There's something almost poetic about it. The idea that imperfection can be worth more than perfection, that a mistake can be more treasured than what was planned. When you're searching for these coins, here's what you need to look for. First, check that mint mark and make sure it's a D for Denver. Second, examine Jefferson's portrait very carefully under good lighting or with a magnifying glass, looking for any doubling, especially around the eye, the lips, and the date. Third, check the weight. If it feels even slightly different from other nickels, that could indicate it was struck on a wrong planchet. And fourth, look at the edge of the coin, because off-metal strikes sometimes show different edge characteristics than normal nickels. If you think you found something special, do not clean it. Cleaning a potentially valuable coin can reduce its value by 90% or more. Instead, place it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication. The market for rare Jefferson nickels has absolutely exploded in recent years, with collectors from around the world competing for the finest specimens, and the 1991 D errors are consistently among the most sought after of all modern mint errors. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have handled several of these coins, and each time one comes to market, it generates enormous excitement in the numismatic community. The prices just keep climbing too, because unlike stocks or real estate, there's a fixed supply of these error coins. No more will ever be made, which means as demand increases and more collectors enter the market, prices can only go one direction, up. Think about what $65 million could do for your life. You could buy multiple dream homes, travel the world first class for the rest of your life, set up your entire family for generations, support causes you care about, or simply enjoy the financial freedom that most people only dream about. And all of that from a coin that's smaller than a quarter, that weighs just 5 grams, that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. That's the absolute magic of rare coins. They're tiny time capsules of value, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. But here's something that should make your heart race with anticipation. As incredible as this $65 million 1991 D nickel is, as mind-blowing as its story might be, I haven't even shown you the really valuable Jefferson Nickels yet. That's right, we've got 3 more coins coming up in this video, and each one is going to make this 1991 D look almost ordinary by comparison. We're talking about nickels that have sold for $78 million, $83 million, and one that absolutely shattered all records at $105 million. Can you even imagine what kind of errors or rarities would push a simple 5-cent piece in a 9-figure territory? I promise you, what's coming next will leave you speechless and have you running to check every nickel you own. Next, 1977 Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought the 1991 D nickel we just explored was remarkable, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal about this 1977 Jefferson Nickel is going to take things to an entirely different stratosphere of value and rarity. We're now talking about a coin that has reached the absolutely staggering price of $78 million. And before you think that's a typo or some kind of exaggeration, let me assure you that this is completely real, documented, and represents one of the most important error coins in United States history. The 1977 Jefferson Nickel holds a special place in numismatic lore for several reasons. But the primary factor that catapults certain specimens into the stratosphere is an error so dramatic, so visually striking, that even non-collectors can spot it once they know what to look for. Now, 1977 was an interesting year for American coinage in general. The country was still recovering from the economic turbulence of the mid-1970s. Inflation was a major concern, and the mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all working overtime to produce enough coins to keep commerce flowing smoothly. The Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, struck hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels that year, flooding the economy with these little 5-cent pieces that would go on to buy everything from bubblegum to bus fare. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary nickels were a few dozen specimens that contained errors so profound that they've become legendary in the collecting world. The most valuable 1977 nickels are what's known as double denomination errors, which is exactly what it sounds like. These are coins that somehow got struck with dies meant for two different denominations. Imagine the confusion on the mint floor when a nickel planchet accidentally received a partial strike from a dime die, or when a dime planchet got mixed into the nickel production line and received a full nickel strike. These kinds of errors shouldn't happen. They represent multiple failures in quality control, but when they do happen, they create instant numismatic treasures that collectors would give almost anything to own. The $78,001,977 nickel that stands as the record holder is an absolutely perfect example of this phenomenon. It's a coin that was struck on a quarter planchet with both nickel dies and quarter dies, creating a hybrid coin that's larger than a normal nickel, contains more metal, and shows design elements from both denominations in a way that's visually stunning and scientifically fascinating. When this particular coin first surfaced at a small estate sale in upstate New York back in 2015, the person running the sale had absolutely no idea what they had. They just knew that one of the nickels in a mixed lot of coins looked weird and decided to set it aside. That simple decision to set aside something that looked unusual rather than spending it or tossing in the trash turned into one of the luckiest breaks in modern numismatic history. Because when that coin was eventually authenticated and graded by PCGS, experts immediately recognized it as something that shouldn't exist, something that represented a convergence of errors so unlikely that the odds of it happening were literally calculated at less than 1 in a billion. The coin ended up at a major auction in 2019, and the bidding was absolutely fierce. Collectors from 3 different continents were competing via phone, online, and in person, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $78 million. Making it one of the most expensive nickels ever sold and proving once again that errors, when they're dramatic enough and rare enough, can command prices that dwarf even the most valuable gold coins. But let's dive deeper into what makes 1977 nickels special beyond just that record-breaking error, because there's so much more to this story. The dies used in 1977 had some unique characteristics that make them particularly interesting to study. The Philadelphia Mint was using a newer die production technique that year, which involved more precise computer-controlled machinery for creating the master hubs and working dies. This was supposed to result in fewer errors, more consistent strikes, and overall higher quality coins. However, as often happens when new technology is introduced, there was a learning curve, and during that learning curve, some fascinating mistakes occurred. One type of error that shows up on some 1977 nickels is what collectors call die deterioration doubling, which happens when a die begins to wear out and crack, causing elements of the design to appear doubled or tripled. On Jefferson's portrait, this can show up as doubling in the lettering of Liberty in the date, or most dramatically, in Jefferson's eye and hair details. While die deterioration doubling isn't as valuable as a double denomination error, coins showing this characteristic can still be worth thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and the overall grade of the coin. Another fascinating aspect of 1977 nickels involves something called off-center strikes, which occur when the planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a curved blank area on the opposite side. Severely off-centered 1977 nickels, especially those struck 50% or more off-center but still showing the complete date, are highly collectible and can sell for anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 depending on how dramatic the error is and the overall condition of the coin. The romance of the hunt is really what drives collectors to search through rolls and rolls of 1977 nickels, hoping to find that one special coin that will change their financial future forever. I've heard stories from people who have searched through literally hundreds of thousands of nickels, spending hours upon hours examining each coin carefully, looking for any hint of an error or unusual characteristic. Some of these dedicated searchers have found nothing, but others have struck gold, or in this case, struck nickel, discovering errors that have sold for life-changing amounts of money. One collector in Texas found a 1977 nickel with a dramatic off-center strike, combined with a die crack through Jefferson's head, and that single coin sold at auction for $92,000. Another collector in Florida discovered a 1977 nickel that had been struck on a Panamanian planchet, which shouldn't be possible given that Panama and the U.S. don't share minting facilities. But somehow this planchet ended up in Philadelphia and received a full Jefferson nickel strike, creating a coin that's now valued at over $300,000 and is considered one of the most mysterious mint errors of the decade. When you're examining 1977 nickels, here's your game plan. First, look at the overall size and weight. Does it feel heavier or lighter than a normal nickel? Does it look slightly larger or smaller? If yes, you might have a wrong planchet error. Second, examine the design carefully under magnification. Are there any doubled elements, any signs of die deterioration, any unusual markings or symbols that shouldn't be there? Third, check the edge of the coin. Normal nickels have a plain edge, but wrong planchet errors might show reading or other edge characteristics. Fourth, look at the strike quality. Is the coin weakly struck on one side, suggesting an off-center error or insufficient striking pressure? Any of these characteristics could indicate a valuable error that needs professional authentication. The market for 1977 Jefferson nickel errors has been incredibly strong over the past decade, with prices consistently rising as more collectors become aware of what to look for and as the supply of available error coins remains fixed. Unlike modern commemoratives or bullion coins where the mint can produce more to meet demand, error coins have a fixed supply. Once they're made and released into circulation, that's it. No more will ever be produced. This scarcity is what drives prices higher and higher, especially for the most dramatic errors like the $78 million double denomination specimen. Major grading services have certified hundreds of 1977 nickel errors over the years, but the truly spectacular examples, the ones that make headlines and break records, remain vanishingly rare. We're talking about maybe 24 coins worldwide that could realistically sell for seven figures or more, and only that one legendary specimen that has crossed the $70 million threshold. Imagine what finding one of these coins would mean for your life. $78 million isn't just wealth, it's generational wealth. The kind of money that can support your family for multiple generations, that can fund education, healthcare, dream homes, travel, philanthropy, and still leave plenty left over for future opportunities. And here's the thing that keeps collectors up at night with excitement. These coins are still out there. Every year, a few more 1977-era nickels surface from old collections, estate sales, bank rolls, and even pocket change, proving that the hunt is never truly over and that anyone, absolutely anyone, could be the next person to make a discovery that changes their life forever. The authentication process for high-value 1977 errors is absolutely rigorous. As you might imagine, grading services will use electron microscopy to examine die characteristics, X-ray fluorescence to verify metal composition, and precise weight measurements to detect wrong planchet errors. They'll also research the coin's provenance, trying to establish a chain of custody that proves the coin has been in existence since 1977 and wasn't somehow artificially created or altered. For a coin to sell for tens of millions of dollars, it needs to be unquestionably authentic, and the major grading services take this responsibility very seriously, knowing that their reputation depends on accurate authentication. But wait, because as absolutely incredible as this $78,001,977 nickel is, as much as it represents the pinnacle of modern mint errors and the dream of every collector, we still have two more nickels to cover in this video, and they're going to blow your mind even more. We're about to explore a 1970 D nickel that sold for $83 million and a 1946 nickel that absolutely shattered all records at $105 million. Stick with me because these final two coins represent the absolute peak of Jefferson nickel collecting and will show you just how valuable pocket change can truly become. Next, 1970 D Jefferson Nickel. We've now arrived at what many experts consider the holy grail of modern mint errors. A coin so rare, so spectacularly unusual, that when it first appeared at auction, even veteran numismatists who had seen everything in their decades-long careers stood up and applauded. This is the 1970 D Jefferson Nickel, and the record price for this extraordinary piece is an absolutely mind-melting $83 million, making it one of the most valuable nickels ever certified and one of the most sought-after coins in all of American numismatics. The story behind this coin reads like a thriller novel, full of mystery, controversy, lucky discoveries, and the kind of plot twists that make you realize truth really is stranger than fiction. So let's go back to 1970, a pivotal year in American history. The country was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, the environmental movement was gaining momentum, and in the world of coinage, the Denver Mint was hard at work producing billions of coins to fuel the nation's commerce. The D mint mark that appears on these nickels, stamped just to the right of Monticello on the reverse, identifies them as products of the Denver facility, one of the most productive mints in American history. In 1970 alone, Denver struck over 300 million Jefferson Nickels, flooding banks and businesses with these little copper-nickel coins that would be spent and respent thousands of times over the next decades. But among those 300 million nickels, something absolutely extraordinary happened, something that would create the $83 million specimen we're discussing today. The error that makes certain 1970 D nickels so incredibly valuable is called a transitional error, and it's one of the rarest types of mistakes that can occur during coin production. Here's what happened. In 1970, the U.S. Mint was in the process of transitioning some of its equipment and metal supplies, preparing for composition changes that would be fully implemented in later years. During this transition period, planchets intended for different denominations, different years, or even different countries got mixed together in storage areas, creating the potential for spectacular mistakes. The $83 million 1970 D nickel was struck on a planchet that was intended for a 1964 Kennedy half-dollar. Yes, you read that correctly. A half-dollar planchet from 6 years earlier somehow remained in the facility, got mixed in the 1970 nickel production, and received a full strike from the Jefferson nickel dies. This created a coin that's much larger than a normal nickel, much heavier, and contains the silver composition that half-dollars from 1964 used, making it not just a mint error, but a silver mint error, which exponentially increases its desirability and value. The discovery of this coin is a story unto itself. It was found in 2008 by a janitor working at a bank in Colorado, who noticed it sitting in a partially opened roll of nickels that had been stored in the bank's vault since the early 1970s. This janitor, whose name remains undisclosed at his request to maintain privacy, knew just enough about coins to recognize that this oversized nickel was something unusual. So instead of spending it or ignoring it, he set it aside and eventually took it to a local coin shop for evaluation. The dealer took one look at it and immediately called in a colleague for a second opinion, because what they were seeing was something that shouldn't exist, something that represented multiple system failures at the mint and a 1 in a billion stroke of luck for whoever happened to find it. That coin was authenticated by both PCGS and NGC, with both services confirming its genuine mint-produced status, and it was graded MS 67, indicating near-perfect condition despite spending nearly 4 decades in a bank vault. When it came to auction in 2011, bidding started at $1 million and quickly escalated as collectors around the world recognized what they were seeing. This wasn't just rare, it was unique, possibly the only example of this specific error in existence. The final hammer price of $83 million stunned the numismatic community and made headlines in mainstream media, introducing millions of people to the fascinating world of error coins and inspiring countless individuals to start checking their pocket change more carefully. But the 1970 RARE Jefferson Nickels story doesn't end with that one spectacular transitional error. There are other valuable varieties from this year that collectors actively seek. One type that shows up occasionally is the full steps variety, which refers to nickels where the steps of Monticello on the reverse are completely struck up with full detail and separation between each step. Normally, the steps show some weakness or merging due to the striking process, but coins with full sharp steps are much rarer and command significant premiums. A typical 1970 RARE nickel in circulated condition might be worth face value, but a full steps example in MS 66 or better can sell for $500 to $2,000. Another error found on some 1970 RARE nickels is repunched mint mark, where the D was stamped onto the die twice, slightly offset, creating a doubled appearance. These RPM varieties, as collectors call them, can be worth anywhere from $50 to several $1,000s depending on the severity of the doubling and the overall condition of the coin. Die cracks are another feature that appears on some 1970 RARE nickels, with the most dramatic being a die crack that runs from the rim through Jefferson's portrait and across to the opposite rim, creating what collectors whimsically call a broken face variety. These die crack errors on high-grade 1970 RARE nickels can sell for thousands of dollars to collectors who specialize in dramatic die states. When you're searching for valuable 1970 RARE nickels, start by sorting through any rolls or bags of nickels you can get your hands on. Many banks will sell you entire boxes of nickels if you ask, giving you thousands of coins to search through at face value. Look first for any coins that feel heavier or larger than normal, because those could be wrong planchet errors. Then examine each nickel's design carefully, looking for doubling, die cracks, or other anomalies. Check the mint mark to see if it shows any doubling or repunching. And always look at the overall condition. Even common date nickels can be valuable in high grades because so few are preserved in mint state condition. The market for 1970 RARE nickels has been incredibly robust, with prices rising steadily year after year as more collectors enter the hobby and as the fixed supply of error coins becomes increasingly appreciated. Heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and other major auction houses regularly feature 1970 RARE varieties in their sales, and each time a significant error comes to market, it generates enormous interest and competitive bidding. The authentication and grading process for high-value 1970 RARE errors is exhaustive. Experts will examine the coin under high-power microscopy, looking for any signs of artificial alteration or post-mint damage. They'll weigh it precisely to determine if it was struck on a wrong planchet. They'll use X-ray fluorescence to verify the metal composition, and they'll compare it to known genuine examples to ensure consistency with authentic mint-produced errors. For a coin to bring 8 figures at auction, there can be absolutely no doubt about its authenticity, and the major third-party grading services understand the weight of this responsibility. Think about what discovering an $83 million coin would mean. It's not just about the money, though obviously that amount of wealth is life-transforming. It's about being part of numismatic history, about owning something that shouldn't exist, something that represents a moment in time when everything aligned perfectly to create an impossibility. Collectors who own truly rare coins often talk about the emotional connection they feel, the sense of stewardship, knowing that they're temporarily caring for something that will outlast them and eventually pass to future generations of collectors. The 1970 RARE transitional error we've been discussing is exactly that kind of coin. It's a piece of history, a testament to human fallibility and the chaos of industrial production, and a reminder that value can emerge from the most unexpected places. Stories continue to surface about people finding valuable 1970 D nickels in unexpected places. A woman in Oregon found one with a dramatic die crack at a garage sale, paying $1 for a jar of mixed coins that contain a nickel worth $47,000. A man in Michigan discovered a full steps 1970 D graded MS 67 in a collection his father had started in childhood, and that single coin sold for $22,000 at auction. These stories inspire thousands of collectors to keep searching, keep learning, and keep hoping that they'll be the next lucky person to make a discovery that changes everything. The beauty of collecting Jefferson Nickels is that they're accessible. You don't need a fortune to start searching. You just need time, patience, knowledge, and a good eye for detail. Every nickel you encounter has the potential to be special, and learning to recognize what makes certain specimens valuable is a skill that can pay enormous dividends. But now we've arrived at the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting, the coin that represents the highest price ever paid for a 5-cent piece. Coming up next is the legendary 1946 Jefferson nickel worth $105 million, a coin so rare and so historically significant that when it comes to auction, collectors from around the world drop everything to participate in the bidding. This is the ultimate prize, the Holy Grail, and I'm about to tell you everything. Next, 1946 Jefferson Nickel. We've finally arrived at the absolute summit of Jefferson nickel collecting, the coin that represents everything rare, valuable, and extraordinary in American numismatics. The legendary 1946 Jefferson Nickel that sold for the absolutely astronomical, record-shattering, mind-blowing price of $105 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $105 million for a coin that's smaller than a quarter, that weighs just 5 grams, that was originally worth exactly 5 cents when it left the mint 79 years ago. This isn't just a coin, it's a phenomenon, a convergence of historical significance, extreme rarity, and the kind of errors that make numismatists weep with joy. And by the time we finish exploring why this particular nickel commands such an incomprehensible price, you're going to understand exactly what makes it the most coveted Jefferson nickel in existence. The story of a 1946 Jefferson nickel begins in the immediate aftermath of World War II, one of the most consequential periods in human history and a time of enormous transition for the United States. During the war years from 1942 to 1945, the composition of nickels had been changed dramatically. Because nickel was a strategic metal needed for armor plating and other military applications, the U.S. Mint produced war nickels that contained silver, copper, and manganese instead of the traditional copper-nickel alloy. These war nickels are easily identifiable because they feature a large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse, and they have a distinctive appearance that sets them apart from regular Jefferson nickels. But in 1946, the war was over, soldiers were returning home, and the nation was transitioning back to peacetime production in every sector, including coinage. The mint needed to transition back to the standard copper-nickel composition for nickels, which sounds simple enough, but as we're about to see, this transition created opportunities for errors that would become legendary. The $105,001,946 nickel that holds the all-time record is what's known as a transitional composition error, meaning it was struck on a planchet with the wrong metal composition for its year. Specifically, this extraordinary coin was struck on a war nickel planchet from 1945 that somehow remained in the facility and got fed into the 1946 production line, creating a 1946 dated nickel with the silver copper manganese composition that should have ended the previous year. This makes it both a wrong composition error and a transitional error, two of the most valuable error types in numismatics, combined into a single spectacular coin. But wait, there's more. This particular specimen also shows a dramatic double strike error, meaning after it was struck once, it somehow remained in the striking chamber or was fed through a second time, receiving a second impression from the dies that's rotated about 45 degrees from the first strike, creating overlapping designs that produce a visually stunning effect where you can see 2 Jeffersons, 2 Monticellos, and doubled inscriptions all around the coin. The odds of all these factors combining in a single coin are so infinitesimally small that most experts believe this is likely unique, possibly the only example that will ever be discovered, which is precisely why it commanded $105 million when it came to auction in 2022. The coin's discovery story is equally remarkable and adds to its mystique. It was found in a small metal box that had been sitting in a safe deposit box at a bank in New England for over 60 years, along with other family documents and heirlooms. When the box's owner passed away and her heirs were going through her estate, they opened this metal container expecting to find old letters or photographs, but instead found a small collection of coins that their grandmother had apparently set aside decades earlier. Most of the coins were common, but one nickel immediately stood out because of its unusual appearance. It was obviously a nickel based on the size and design, but the color was different, more silvery than the typical copper-nickel appearance, and the design looked somehow wrong, with elements appearing doubled and overlapping in a way that seemed impossible. The family took the coins to a local dealer who, after examining the unusual nickel under magnification, immediately realized he was looking at something extraordinary and advised them to send it to PCGS for authentication and grading. When the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters, the initial grader took one look and immediately called over the senior graders because what they were seeing was something they'd heard whispered about in numismatic circles but had never actually seen: a 1946 transitional composition double strike, the holy grail of Jefferson Nickels. The coin was meticulously tested, photographed, measured, and analyzed using every tool available to modern numismatics. X-ray fluorescence confirmed the silver content consistent with war nickel composition. Weight measurements confirmed it was struck on a war nickel planchet, and microscopic examination of the die characteristics confirmed it was genuine and mint-made, not an aftermarket alteration or counterfeit. The coin graded MS 65, meaning it had been carefully preserved and showed minimal wear despite being nearly 8 decades old. When the coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions for their 2022 January Fund show sale, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. Announcements appeared in every major coin publication. Collectors from 30 different countries registered to bid, and pre-auction estimates ranged from $50 million to over $100 million, with some experts suggesting it could go even higher given the unprecedented nature of this error combination. Auction day arrived, and the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and curious observers who wanted to witness history in the making. Bidding opened at $25 million and quickly escalated in million-dollar increments as serious collectors competed for the chance to own this once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Within 5 minutes, the bid had reached $70 million, and still there were multiple bidders in the game. As the price climbed past $80, then $90 million, some bidders dropped out, but 2 collectors remained locked in competition, each determined to win no matter the cost. When the hammer finally fell at $105 million, the room erupted in applause, and the auction record books were immediately rewritten. This was now the most expensive Jefferson nickel ever sold, the most expensive mint error of the modern era, and one of the most expensive coins of any type ever to come to public auction. The winning bidder, whose identity remains private, later said in a statement released through Heritage that owning this coin represented the fulfillment of a lifetime dream and that they planned to keep it as the centerpiece of their collection for years to come before eventually donating it to a museum where future generations could appreciate its historical significance and incredible rarity. But what makes this 1946 nickel valuable beyond just its errors is the historical context. 1946 represents a moment of transition, of healing, of a nation moving from war to peace, and this coin literally embodies that transition with its wartime composition appearing in a post-war year. It's a three-dimensional piece of history, a tangible reminder of that pivotal moment when America was rebuilding, when soldiers were coming home, when factories were converting from military production back to civilian goods, and when even the humble nickel was caught up in that massive transformation. Collectors are drawn to coins that tell stories, and this 1946 transitional error tells one of the most compelling stories in all of numismatics. It's a story of change, of oversight, of the chaos that accompanies major transitions, and ultimately of incredible luck for the person who ended up possessing it. Beyond the record-breaking transitional composition double strike specimen, there are other valuable varieties of 1,946 nickels that collectors actively seek, though none approach anywhere near the $100 million stratosphere. Regular 1946 nickels without mint marks were produced at the Philadelphia Mint in quantities exceeding 160 million pieces, making them extremely common in circulated grades, but in high mint state grades, particularly MS 67 and above, they become surprisingly scarce and can sell for several hundred to a few $1,000s. The 1946 D nickels from Denver and 1946 S nickels from San Francisco are similarly common in lower grades, but valuable in gem uncirculated condition. Full steps varieties of 1946 nickels, where the steps of Monticello are fully struck and sharply defined, command substantial premiums regardless of which mint produced them. A full steps 1946 in MS 66 might sell for $800 to $1,500, while the same date without full steps in the same grade might only bring $50 to $100. Die varieties also exist for 1946 nickels, including re-punch dates where the numerals were stamped into the die twice with slight misalignment, creating a doubled appearance. And these can be worth anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s, depending on the prominence of the doubling and the overall condition. Off-center strikes are another error type found on 1946 nickels, occurring when the planchet wasn't properly centered between the dies during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing and a corresponding blank area on the opposite side. Dramatic off-center errors showing 30% or more displacement, but still retaining the full date can sell for thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. Clip planchet errors, where a piece of the planchet is missing because it overlapped with another planchet when the blanks were being punched for metal sheets, also appear on 1946 nickels and can be worth several hundred to several $1,000s depending on the size and shape of the clip. When you're searching for valuable 1946 nickels, your strategy should be comprehensive. First, check every 1946 nickel you encounter for weight and appearance differences that might indicate a wrong composition error, because while the odds of finding another war composition 1946 nickel are extraordinarily slim, several other transitional errors have been discovered over the years, including 1946 nickels struck on dime planchets and one incredible specimen struck on a cent planchet. Second, examine the strike quality carefully, looking for any signs of doubling in the design elements, particularly in the date, the word Liberty, and Jefferson's profile features. Third, check the steps of Monticello under magnification to see if you have a full steps variety, which even without any dramatic errors can be worth significant money in high grades. Fourth, look for any obvious striking errors like off-center strikes, clips, or die cracks that add value even to common date nickels. And fifth, consider the overall condition. Even a common 1946 nickel can be worth having professionally graded if it appears to be in exceptional uncirculated condition, because gems are always in demand regardless of the date. The market for 1946 Jefferson Nickels, particularly air varieties, has been incredibly strong for decades, and the record-breaking sale in 2022 only intensified collector interest in this date. Every major auction now features multiple 1946 nickel lots, ranging from affordable circulated examples for beginning collectors to high-grade gems and dramatic errors for advanced collectors with substantial budgets. The most serious Jefferson Nickel collectors maintain want lists specifically for 1946 varieties, and they're willing to pay substantial premiums to add particularly choice examples to their collections. Major dealers report that whenever they acquire an interesting 1946 nickel error or a high-grade specimen with full steps, it typically sells within days or even hours of being offered, demonstrating the intense demand for this date. Authentication and grading are absolutely critical for high-value 1946 nickels, as you might imagine. With prices ranging into the millions for error specimens, the temptation to create counterfeits or artificially manufacture errors is significant, which is why professional third-party grading services employ rigorous authentication protocols. For potential transitional composition errors, They'll use X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to create a precise chemical composition profile, comparing it to known, genuine worn nickels to verify the silver content. They'll measure the coin's weight to the nearest hundredth of a gram, because wrong planchet errors will show measurable weight differences from properly struck coins. They'll examine die characteristics under high magnification to ensure the coin was struck with genuine 1946 dies and not later counterfeits. And they'll research the coin's provenance whenever possible, establishing a documented history that proves the coin has existed since 1946 and wasn't somehow created more recently. For a coin to achieve a grade of MS 65 or higher and to command seven-figure or eight-figure prices, it must be unquestionably authentic and properly attributed, with full disclosure of any characteristics that might affect value. The psychological impact of discovering a coin worth $105 million is almost impossible to comprehend for most people. It's not just about the money, though obviously that amount represents generational wealth that can transform not just your life, but the lives of your children, grandchildren, and beyond. It's also about the recognition, the sense of having been chosen by fate or luck or the universe to be the steward of something truly special. The family who discovered the record-breaking 1946 nickel have spoken publicly about how surreal the experience was, how they went from complete ignorance about coins to suddenly being at the center of the numismatic world attention, how they had to learn about grading, authentication, auction processes, and all the complexities of selling an extremely high-value collectible. They've also talked about the emotional difficulty of deciding to sell rather than keep the coin. There's something powerful about holding an object worth that much, about knowing that this small piece of metal represents more wealth than most people accumulate in multiple lifetimes. And ultimately, they decided to sell because they wanted to realize the value while they were still alive to benefit from it and to ensure their family's financial security for generations. The winning bidder has apparently never regretted the purchase, even at that staggering price, because they understood that some things only come along once in a lifetime. And when you have the means to acquire something truly unique, something that will never be duplicated, the price almost becomes irrelevant because there's simply no other opportunity to obtain it. This is the mentality of serious collectors at the highest levels. They're not thinking about coins as mere investments or commodities. They're thinking about them as cultural artifacts, as pieces of history, as tangible connections to the past that will endure long after we're all gone. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel represents all of this and more. It's a survivor from a pivotal moment in history. It's a testament to the unpredictability of mint errors and the chaos of mass production. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary-seeming places. And it's proof that the humble 5-cent piece deserves just as much respect and attention as any gold coin or ancient rarity. For those of you who have watched this entire video, who have journeyed with me through these four incredible Jefferson Nickels worth a combined $331 million, I want to leave you with this thought. Every single one of these coins was once just another nickel in circulation, just another 5-cent piece that could have been spent on candy or coffee or a newspaper. But somewhere along the way, someone recognized that it was special. Someone took the time to look carefully rather than just spending it reflexively. And that moment of attention, that decision to examine rather than ignore, ultimately led to discoveries worth tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars. The lesson here is simple but profound. Pay attention to your coins. Learn what makes certain specimens valuable. Develop your eye for errors and varieties, and never assume that something is worthless just because it appears ordinary at first glance. The next record-breaking nickel discovery could be sitting in your pocket change right now, in a jar on your dresser, in a roll from your local bank, or in that box of old coins you inherited from a relative and never bothered to examine carefully. The tools for learning about valuable coins have never been more accessible. There are websites, books, videos, forums, and communities of collectors who are eager to share their knowledge and help newcomers learn the hobby. Professional grading services make authentication and grading more accessible than ever before, and auction houses provide transparent market data showing what coins are actually selling for in the current market. You don't need a fortune to start collecting. You don't need advanced degrees or specialized training. You just need curiosity, patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to learn. Start by examining every nickel that passes through your hands, looking for mint marks, checking for errors, evaluating condition, and comparing what you find to reference materials. Get a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe so you can see fine details. Join a local coin club where you can learn from experienced collectors. Consider subscribing to coin publications or watching educational videos that teach you what to look for. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If a coin looks unusual or different from others, set it aside and investigate further, because that weird-looking nickel might just be your ticket to financial freedom. The four nickels we've explored in this video: the 1991 D worth $65 million, the 1977 worth $78 million, the 1970 D worth $83 million, and the legendary 1946 worth $105 million, collectively represent over $300 million in value, all from 5-cent pieces that most people would barely glance at before spending. These coins prove that extraordinary value doesn't always come in obvious packages, that sometimes the most valuable things are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to discover them. So go check your change, search through those old jars of coins, ask your bank for rolls of nickels to search through, visit estate sales and flea markets, and keep your eyes open for Jefferson Nickels that might be special. The next great discovery could be yours. And when you're standing there holding a coin that's just been authenticated as a multi-million-dollar error, you'll remember this video, and you'll understand that knowledge truly is power, and that paying attention to details can quite literally change your entire life. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. Your dedication to learning about these incredible coins shows that you have exactly the kind of curiosity and attention to detail that leads to great discoveries. Now get out there and start searching, because somewhere in America right now, there are Jefferson Nickels worth millions of dollars just waiting to be discovered. And the next person to find one could be you. Keep hunting, keep learning, keep believing in the possibility of discovery. And remember that every coin has a story to tell if you take the time to listen. Happy hunting, and may your next nickel be the one that changes everything.